And that's it. It's over. This historic 2020 NBA championship belongs to the Los Angeles Lakers.
Hey guys, welcome back to another video, this time on how the Lakers built their super team. This was actually one of my first ever timeline videos I ever made, right as LeBron joined the Lakers. But obviously since then a lot has changed, both for the Lakers and how I make these videos. So I decided to remake it. Let me know in the comments which team you guys want to see next. But anyways, let's get straight into this video. So coming into the 2012 to 2013 season, the Lakers were at a crossroads. They had won the championship in 2009 and ran it back in 2010, but since then had followed it up with dominant regular seasons but poor playoff performances, getting eliminated in the second round twice, first to the Mavericks and then the Thunder. On top of that, last offseason was a historic punch to the gut as the Lakers arranged a trade to bring Chris Paul to LA, only for the then commissioner David Stern to veto the trade as he felt it wasn't fair enough, largely causing last year's second round exit. On top of that, coming into the next season, Phil Jackson decided to move on from the Lakers once again and eventually sign on with the Knicks. And with these losses, it seemed like the dominance of the Lakers, which had lasted for decades, was finally coming to an end. And the Lakers had to decide whether they should keep pushing on or finally embrace a rebuild. But as everyone expected, Kobe was not prepared to go out quietly and push the front office to make a huge splash during the offseason, leading the Lakers into making two blockbuster trades, including trading away a series of picks for All-Star guard Steve Nash. After that, they also decided to add another superstar by trading for Dwight Howard in a complicated 4-team trade, who at this point was still well in his prime, creating one of the most terrifying offensive powerhouses in the NBA.
If you can get Dwight Howard, Steve Nash, and not give up Pau Gasol, you had a very, very good summer, and the Lakers' window is flung right back open.
Yeah, how do you now see them with an aging Spurs team and a younger Oklahoma City team in terms of how they fit out west?
Well, certainly we're going to have to see it all come together, but I mean, I don't know how you couldn't immediately list them as a championship contender. Dwight Howard.
Kobe was incredibly confident with his new team, believing that Steve Nash would ease some of the playmaking strain, and Dwight Howard could eventually become the new face of the Lakers. And many analysts believed in the hype too, seeing the Lakers as title contenders once again after a brief 2-year break. But despite this hype, the season started off on a low note as new head coach Mike Brown tried changing the Lakers' offensive strategy to the Princeton offense to replace Phil Jackson's triangle offense. And after going 0-8 in the preseason and 1-4 in the regular season, Mike Brown was quickly fired and replaced by Mike D'Antoni, who quickly dumped Brown's slow offense and replaced it with his fast-paced one. And while the Lakers did improve slightly with his new style, they still struggled with chemistry issues and injuries. And coming into the end of the season, the Lakers needed an almost perfect record to qualify for the playoffs. And this is where Kobe's greatness came in, as he began to play close to 48 minutes a game to close out the season, carrying the Lakers to an 8-1 record to barely qualify for the playoffs. But unfortunately, all this playing time took its toll, and in the 80th game of the season, Kobe tore his Achilles, forcing him to sit out for the next 6 to 8 months.
Kobe drives. Kobe all the way. Dunks it home. Kobe Bryant, sensational.
Everybody, even the Nets fans are on their feet.
Look out. And the Lakers lead 82-80. Classic.
And without Kobe, the Lakers were completely outmatched against the second-seeded Spurs. And despite a strong performance by Pau Gasol, the Lakers were destroyed every single game as they were swept by the Spurs.
And by the way, here's Pau Gasol. Pau Gasol and the tribute to Pau. And with all the rumors about the future of Pau Gasol, this is a heartfelt ovation from this crowd, appreciating everything he's done for this team.
What's left of the...
So now coming into the next season, expectations were low for the Lakers as Dwight Howard had left during free agency, Kobe was sidelined until December, and Steve Nash had just turned 40. On top of that, if you look at the Lakers lineup, it was one of the worst they've had in decades. So it's mostly role players at every position without a true star to lead them. And as everyone expected, the Lakers started off the season 10-10, crumbling without any real leader to guide the team. However, there's still some optimism as on December 8th, Kobe Bryant returned from his injury, looking prepared to boost the Lakers from their mediocre record. However, after only 9 days, Kobe fractured his knee, forcing him to sit out for the rest of the year. And after losing the hope of Kobe returning and saving the season, the Lakers fell even further, eventually ending with a 27-55 record for the 14th seed in the West.
Returns to the lineup, and then just the other day, a fracture in his left knee, which now the Lakers are saying will keep him out of the lineup for 6 weeks.
So last season, the Lakers posted their worst record since 1960 when Elgin Baylor just joined the team. forcing Mike D'Antoni to resign, creating space for former Showtime player Byron Scott to coach the team.
Byron Scott is a local guy. He grew up in Inglewood. He started his playing career with the Lakers back in 1983, and he knows what Showtime means. He won 3 NBA titles with the purple and gold.
So once again, following their failed Superteam experiment with Dwight and Nash, the Lakers decided to go big during free agency, chasing both Carmelo Anthony and LeBron James. But this time, the stars were unwilling to join the Lakers and ended up signing with other franchises, leaving the Lakers once again with a mediocre team.
With the 7th pick in the 2014 NBA Draft, the Los Angeles Lakers select Julius Randle from the University of Kentucky.
So heading into the 2014 season, expectations are once again low as Kobe was clearly getting older and there was a lack of any real playmaker to pick up the mantle on their declining offense. They did try to address this by signing Jeremy Lin, but both Kobe and Lin alone were not enough to carry the Lakers offense as they followed up their all-time terrible season with a worse season, ending with just 21 wins. To make matters worse, in the first game of the season, first-round pick Julius Randle injured his right leg, ending his entire season. On top of that, midway through the year, Kobe injured his shoulder, causing him also to miss the rest of the year. Overall, it became very clear that the Lakers' attempt to jumpstart didn't work, and they needed to start embracing a full rebuild.
Yep, twisted that ankle. Yep. Well, we at first thought the injury to Julius Randle was just a twisted ankle, but is obviously much more. Gary.
With the 2nd pick in the 2015 NBA Draft, the Los Angeles Lakers select D'Angelo Russell from The Ohio State University.
Heading into the next season, the Lakers were clearly at their lowest point in franchise history. But they did have some young talent which they can grow into a decent team, including D'Angelo Russell, Julius Randle, and Nick Young. However, it was clearly the end of the long Kobe dynasty, as it was expected that this would be Kobe's last season, a fear which was later confirmed in November. And effectively, the rest of the season became Kobe's farewell tour, as the Lakers were clearly in no position to even attempt to contend for the playoffs. And they ended up finishing with a franchise-worst 17 wins, beating last year's record for worst season.
NBA champion, and he is the Black Mamba, all the way from Lamelo to the floor, with the number 24, the one, the only, Kobe Bryant!
But even with their terrible record, the season ended up being one of the most memorable, as Kobe put on an incredible show in his last ever NBA game where he scored 60 points along with 4 assists and rebounds to cap off an incredible NBA career.
Great. And on his final night, it's one last glimpse of greatness.
With the 2nd pick in the 2016 NBA Draft, the Los Angeles Lakers select Brandon Ingram from Duke University.
So after Kobe's retirement, the Lakers decided to completely rebuild the front office by hiring Rob Pelinka, Magic Johnson, and Luke Walton to lead the new era Lakers. Unfortunately, before the new front office arrived in February, the old front office, in an attempt to enter win now mode and keep their jobs, made terrible free agent contract moves, including signing Mozgov to a $64 million deal, Deng to a $72 million deal, and Clarkson to a $50 million deal, a mistake that the Lakers will spend the next few years cleaning up. So entering this next season, expectations were low as this team was still very young and not yet at a contending point. However, there's still some cautious optimism that behind Magic Johnson and Rob Pelinka, a new Lakers dynasty could be brewing. And while the Lakers did end up losing 56 games this season, they still managed to surpass last year's win total. And there was this surprising new young energy in the building that the Lakers hadn't seen in years.
With 8 to play, out to Nick Young for the lead. He's got it! The Lakers lead by 2 as Nick Young drains it.
With the 2nd pick in the 2017 NBA Draft, the Los Angeles Lakers select Lonzo Ball from UCLA.
Entering the 2017 season, expectations were at an all-time high, as hype was exploding around UCLA rookie Lonzo Ball. Lonzo's meteoric rise to stardom was a combination of both his father LeVar Ball's outrageous statements that his son was better than Steph Curry and he himself could beat Michael Jordan, but also because Magic Johnson had claimed that Lonzo had the highest basketball IQ of any point guard, and Lonzo had proven it early in the summer league, setting league records for his play. On top of that, the Lakers further showed their dedication to Lonzo by trading away their star point guard D'Angelo Russell, creating as much space as possible for Lonzo to take over. Overall, in one offseason, Lonzo had become the most hyped rookie prospect since LeBron James in 2003. And suddenly, reasonable expectations for a young, growing team were out the window, as fans expected Lonzo to lead the Lakers into the playoff picture like a young LeBron. And as many of you could have guessed, Lonzo failed to live up to this insane hype, as the Lakers didn't qualify for the playoffs. However, from a reasonable perspective, the season was actually a decent success, as the Lakers' record improved once again, and their young core looked incredibly promising for future years.
It has it in all kinds of trouble, finds Lonzo for three, in there! Lonzo and the Lakers on top, working Murray. Lonzo for three,
Bam!
Yes! Lonzo is feeling it, and so are the Lakers.
NBA draft, the Los Angeles Lakers select Moritz Wagner from Berlin and the University of Michigan.
So coming into the 2018 offseason, the Lakers were excited by the amount of star players on the market, but they didn't have the cap necessary to attract a superstar. So over the last 6 months, they've slowly been creating cap space by dumping excessive contracts. Firstly, last season they traded both Larry Nance and Jordan Clarkson to the Cavs. On top of that, they had thrown in Mozgov with their D'Angelo Russell trade, clearing another $64 million in cap. And finally, they bought out Luol Deng's contract to create space for 2 max contracts. And with this space, they managed to sign LeBron James to a 4-year, $154 million deal, instantly making the Lakers contenders. But even after signing LeBron, the Lakers still had cap to trade for another superstar, and they began to enter trade talks for Kawhi Leonard. However, in the end, Kawhi went to the Raptors, and the Lakers decided to instead sign role players to surround LeBron, including KCP, Rajon Rondo, Lance Stevenson, JaVale McGee, and Tyson Chandler. And many fans were confused about Magic's direction with this new team, as it didn't seem strong enough to beat the Curry, KD, Clay Warriors. But regardless, the Lakers still looked like contenders, with expectation that LeBron would carry the Lakers like he did with the Cavs last year. ESPN predicted that the Lakers would end as the 4th seed, and multiple analysts had the Lakers going anywhere from 1st to 6th seed in the West. Unfortunately, midway through the season when the Lakers had a 20-14 record, LeBron injured his groin, forcing him to miss time as the Lakers crumbled without their leader, and they ended up finishing with only 2 more wins than last year, missing the playoffs altogether.
James holding his left leg, and obviously his groin area as well, he's shaken up on that play.
After the season, a surprise move, Magic Johnson decided to step down from his role in the front office after his disappointing season last year.
I'm not gonna be here.
In addition to losing Magic, the Lakers decided to move on from Luke Walton and instead signed Frank Vogel to lead the Lakers into the next season. But their biggest offseason move was their dramatic trade to bring superstar Anthony Davis to the Lakers in exchange for most of their young depth and future picks. With LeBron and Anthony Davis, everyone was certain that the Lakers were now title contenders, and last year's tragedy wouldn't happen again. All of a sudden, in 2 offseasons, the Lakers are back to being a Kobe-era super team. And this super team dominated as they finished the season with 52 wins and 19 losses, good for the 1st seed in the West and qualifying for the playoffs for the first time since the Kobe Bryant era. And in the playoffs, the Lakers continued their dominant streak with easy victories against the Blazers, Rockets, and Nuggets. And finally, in their finals matchup against the Heat, the Lakers continued to show out, taking a commanding 3-1 lead before finishing the series in 6 games, for LeBron to claim his 4th ring and finals MVP.
And that's it, it's over. This historic 2020 NBA championship belongs to the Los Angeles Lakers.
coming into the next season, on paper, the Lakers are a better team than last year, with a lot of added depth and experience. But this time, the Lakers got very unlucky, with various injuries to both Anthony Davis and LeBron James. And when the Lakers' two main stars weren't on the court, their entire team collapsed, leading them to the 7th seed in the West with only 42 wins and 30 losses. But still, hopes are high for a decently far playoff run, especially since LeBron was healthy going into the playoffs, and they did manage to barely beat the Warriors in the play-in with this crazy shot to win the game.
By Green, throws it back up top. James puts up the three. Oh, it's gone! LeBron James from downtown!
But then in the first round, the Lakers had to face the Suns. And at first it seemed that the Lakers had it in the bag, especially after their Game 3 performance. But after that, the Suns just completely took off and dominated the last 3 games to win the series.
It is the first round series that LeBron James has lost in his career.
So everyone just thought the Lakers had a bad series this playoff, so would maybe add a decent role player or two and run it back next season. But instead, the Lakers decided to go big and add former MVP and 9-time All-Star Russell Westbrook to their lineup, making it one of the most dangerous teams in NBA history. On top of that, there are still rumors that the Lakers are looking to add either Kyle Lowry, Buddy Hield, DeMar DeRozan, and more. Overall, with a big 3 of 8-time All-Star and 4-time All-NBA Anthony Davis, along with a 9-time All-Star and 2-time All-NBA Russell Westbrook, plus the 17-time All-Star and 13-time All-NBA LeBron James, it seems that this team is almost guaranteed a final spot. Let me know in the comments if you think the Lakers are going to win it all this season, but I'll see you guys next time. Peace.